Call the Property Service Committee meeting to order. First, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in the Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Next is the approval of the agenda. Normal, Peter.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Nay. Motion carried. Next is errors, omissions, or corrections to the minutes of January 16th. Any errors or omissions? Any errors or omissions? Any errors or omissions? Hearing, seeing none or hearing none? We'll consider those all right. Next is the reports. First up is the building inspector's report. By Councilor Watt.
Second.
By Councilor Turner. Discussion on it? None? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Count nay. Motion carried. Next is the bylaw dog control officer's report. Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Count nay. Motion carried. Next is the development officer's report.
Elmo. Second.
Second. Questions on the report? Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
My name, motion carried. Next is a map request for any facility, this valley county federal districts that sell an open liquor. Council, what do you want to?
Well, it's been the last time I asked this question, but there's still a few I haven't heard from. So if they don't mind getting back, just so know. Yes, they're looking for the liquor outlets, distilleries, or even farmers market that may sell unopened bottles. Appreciate the call. Thank you.
They didn't get already to guide for, would you please go back to it? Okay, next on the agenda is the Salem Municipal Water and Wastewater Project, Warden Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This will take a few minutes. I do want to, before I begin, thank the people of Salem that are here tonight with concern for the future of their community. Over the last 3 weeks, I've gotten nothing but bad news for this small community. Actually, technically Green Hill, but not referred to as Salem. So folks, if I go back to 2020, this council approved the as its #1 priority, Salem water, the second one, Salem wastewater. So that was good news for the village of Salem. We're able to look forward to good water. There's never been good water in Salem. In fact, there's terrible water in Salem. It's a wonder anybody lives there. They have to do everything. Hauling water from the Green Hill Spring most of the time, or hauling water from somewhere, buying water, all kinds of filtration systems, trying to make that water drinkable, but it's really not drinkable. It's true of this. And drill another well or another well is just a waste of money. So that's why I think that's why it became our #1 priority here. We realized it was a smaller community than some, but the need was desperate, especially for the water, and to do the wastewater at the same time made sense. So things moved along, and I feel really badly about this because in the 2020 election, when I went door to door in Salem, I told the people that this council had approved their project, their water wastewater project, as our #1 priority. It would take some time to do all of the design work and get the funding lined up, but eventually move it out. Here, almost 3 years later, 2.5 years, we get a phone call, or the CEO gets a phone call back 3 weeks ago now on a Friday afternoon. The deputy minister saying that the Salem project was scheduled in October, and without any knowledge to him or to myself or the deputy warden. So that was a total shock, but they were interested in doing the Thornton project. I said, well, that's fine, we have the Zorba project down, it's the number 3 and 4, and they're slated for the future years. But no, they weren't interested in the Salem one, they were only interested in the Zorba one. So I met with the deputy, Paul Flesh, a couple of times, and tried to explain to him, here's where the priorities were selected and whatnot. And it didn't really seem to be getting served to him. He didn't, you know, he kept asking for more information. I said, well, and I think Brian also asked, why was it turned down? What was the reasons? Well, one was because he didn't include an indigenous survey. And I'm going to let Brian speak to some of these things later as to, you know, why he didn't include that, that there was a reason. And there was just very surface type stuff, you know, like it wasn't complete. Your application wasn't complete. And I said, well, if it wasn't complete, you know, why didn't you get a hold of us and tell us what was missing? What do you need? And this morning when I met with them, I said, well, we don't do that. Seemed kind of strange that something wasn't there and they needed it, but anyway, that was another reason. And but they never mentioned the real reason. I think that they landed on today, but they didn't mention that in the early discussions. So at some point, I thought, well, people of Salem owe it, or I owe it to them to get to the bottom of this and find out where did this go off track, and is there any way to get it back on track? So I made a trip down to Halifax and met this morning at 9 o'clock. Let's see, here, I just want to read you what they sent out. They said they would send a report of that meeting we had this morning, but at that meeting were the Municipal Affairs, Sean Lower, and the Deputy Minister, Paul Flesh, as well as the gentleman's name was Peter Harrison, seasoned assistant. And then online or virtually were MLA McFarland and her assistant and myself. So there were 6 of us all together, 2 virtually and 4 in person in the room. I'm going to read you what their summary was of this Mr. Harrison sent of this morning's meeting, and then I'll give you my opinion on what took place. In a meeting today between Minister Lower and Warden Carter, there was discussion regarding the Salem Loop's water and wastewater project application submitted by the municipality of the County of Pictou for funding consideration under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, commonly known as ISIP. Some of the criteria used in the application process was reviewed. This included elements we are looking for in applications to demonstrate, such as showing positive impacts to densification and or promote new housing opportunities. Providing evidence that options or alternative solutions have been considered, such as water extension with on-site septic, utilizing wastewater management districts, and indication that the sustainability of the project has been considered, in brackets operational and maintenance costs as well as future renewal. And then he goes on to say it was discussed that the Salem Loop project, as described, would reach 30 households at a cost of over $200,000 per household. Considering these substantial costs measured by the net impact, the minister has informed the warden that this project is not being supported to go forward for further consideration. So that was their summary of this morning's meeting. To give you some idea of what was said there. I think when it came right down to it, they're laying their hands mostly on it's too high a cost per individual unit. And so I did ask our CAO for comparison of costs for some of the past projects we did, and one was very close by to Salem, was the Springfield Estates. There was 28 homes served at a cost of $53,059. Salem is $60,942. But we got to remember the cost went up a lot this summer. It just kept on increasing. That's true in our library projects and all kinds of other projects where the costs have gone through the roof. But even considering that, it's not far from what Springfield Estates was. And McFarland's Brook, well, there's 195 people served, but it's still 52,250. Now, for some reason, in the meeting there this morning, they told me that the Thorburn project, which was third on our list, was the Salem one was 10 times more expensive than the Thorburn one. And I said, well, that's not what their CAO told me. Well, he's wrong. And I don't think he is. I think when you look at the figures, yes, Salem's small, and so therefore more cost per household, but none of these are cheap. They're all 53,000, 52, 60, and you get in the wastewater 49, 38. So they're all expensive. We know that. But the minister's big point, and I do have some respect for the minister. I'm not saying what the rest of the people in the room, but for the minister, I have some respect. And his big thing was densification. He said everything's about housing. You know, it's got to be about housing. He said, if you were putting a seniors home in there in Salem, well, we could do it in a hurry. There's going to be a lot of people living there. Or if you had a contractor all ready to go, you know, build 100 homes there, you know, there wouldn't be any problem approving this project. So I told him a few things about Salem. I want to read those out here. The positives about Salem in terms of if we were to put water and wastewater in there, that community could build up very quickly. Number one, it's got highway exposure. It's got the old Trans-Canada, the main highway going right by, and the 4-lane is very far away. It has 2 fire halls within a couple miles each way or less. Not going to, you know, run short of water for sure. They've got schools on both sides of them, both an elementary school and a high school, not very far away either way. So they've got what people are looking for to move into a community. The one big negative that Salem has is lack of drinking. And that's what this was meant to try to address. So in terms of densification, what the minister was talking about, and he said, oh, you're going to, the deputy minister said, you're trying to build it and they will come. I said, well, yes, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to put water and wastewater in there, and then we've got an area with lots of room for people to build, and lots of there's even a recreational field that's being developed now. So young families are going to be more allowed to move in. So there's a lot of good things that Salem has going for it, but the water weighs on that lack of good water. But where to from here? I guess it just didn't sense. When I left that room this morning at 10 o'clock, it was very clear to me that they had no intention of, well, the deputy minister said, don't mention Salem. We're not funding Salem. Bring out Thorburn, we'll look at Thorburn right away. And I'm not against funding Thorburn. Don't get me wrong, I'm working for the whole county. I'm not against Thorburn, but we did make a choice here at the table as to our priorities. And, you know, I guess they've got the top hand here. They've got the dollars. So they can tell us when they're not supporting it, then they're not supporting it. We don't, you know, I went down in the last desperate attempt to try and get things changed. I thought, well, maybe we can give up on the wastewater and just go to the water. Maybe we can do that. Maybe we can spread it over a couple of years. I went in with the idea, let's see if we can make a deal here somehow. But in the end of the day, I knew there was no chance of getting a deal. I think there's something wrong here. I'm not going to say too much. Some of the people in this room know what I'm talking about, but there's some underhanded stuff that's taking place here. It's not something I'm going to talk about tonight, but it's not fair for people to say how much is happening. If it's any fault of mine, or if people for some reason aren't approving this project because of who their counselor is, then I would gladly step away. Because I think it's too important to the community of Salem to have personal reasons for why some of this stuff is taking place. Like I said, I do have respect for the minister that was in the room about it this morning. He was dealing with the information he was given. The information he's given is we have to have high density areas. But my argument back to him was that we will have high density areas someday in Salem. Why aren't people going to build there if you've got all these assets in the name? We want our rural communities to build and grow. And we have to have faith that if we spend the money, that they will grow. They're close to towns, they got everything going for them. We've already spent considerable money on this project with CBC help. doing the design work, somewhere around $60,000. So we have an investment here in this, we can just drop it, and, I'm more than willing to work with Thorburn and try and help them get their project done, but I feel, that I'm not, or we're not as a council even living up to our obligations to people of Salem. Who now for over 2 years, I've asked, our CAO, been here every week, at least every second week, and the deputy warden to verify that. You know, where are we with the Salem project? Where are we with the Salem project? And, he kept telling me, well, I checked with this one, I checked with that one, they're gonna look into it. Nothing back. I asked those fellows this morning about that, or advisor, Mr. McDonald or whatever. Oh, he's not the right fellow. You never hear back from him. No, he has nothing to do with that, but, there just seemed to be excuses enough to go around, and I think there was an effort made to drive the price of this up as high as they could. We had some stuff happen, you know, that did put it up. All projects went up, but don't go with that, and involved some of the library and picked up. Same thing happened there, you know, the project went up a lot in cost, but they're dealing with, they're dealing with other levels of government, and they're both provincial and federal are trying to help them, so they're dealing with it. But these people here from Salem, there's no real chance left with the provincial government at this point. So the reason I asked them to come in tonight to show their concern, and it is a big concern, that is there a way that our council can help any, I know we can't do it all by ourselves, but is there a way that possible that we could consider you know, salvaging even a part of this project, and the part on top of the water, because it's just the whole thing, you know, without water, it's really not going to be any growth in that community. It would have been nice to have the sewer at the same time, but without the province's commitment and without anybody fighting for it there, I didn't see any chance at all of that happening. So the question I want to put to our CAO, who was roundly criticized this morning, and I told him this at that meeting, that, you know, he didn't fill it in right, he didn't do this right, he didn't do that right. And I said, well, I'll bring that back and let him know that. But he's already told me that he did do those things. And you know, he called for information. What more information do you want? Well, we got all the information we need. We don't need any more. That was the answer that he got from the gentleman in the department. And the last question they wanted was, well, what's the up-to-date cost? What's the latest cost? No problem asking that, but it's just to get it up a bit higher if they could. I think that's what they were resting on, but so I'd like to ask our CAO at this point if he has any comments on the fact that the problems were in the application. And if there's, I know it needs the agreement around this council table, if we can do anything to help, but first we need to know what the details are, how we might do that, where we might get the funding. So is it good, Mr. Chair, turn it over to our CAO to respond to that?
Sure. So most of the points that Gordon had touched on, the application, as Gordon said, like 2-3 weeks ago, there was no application. They didn't have an application, didn't even know anything about it.
No, we're saying once.
Yeah, we get a response today saying, well, the application was reviewed and should get to for these reasons, so it was a little unnerving. The Indigenous form that they're, the deputy minister had referred to was submitted. It is a checklist and boxes, and if you check the boxes, then most of those questions, does this apply to your project? Well, no. So at the end of it, there actually was no requirement to do a consultation if it didn't check any of the boxes that would trigger it. So the warden, correct, we did follow up with the department on numerous occasions. And we were told something from the infrastructure program will get back to you. That didn't happen. We actually went to them last fall when we were close to tender and said, can we tender this before the award of the project is basically given, or the program award, and the answer they came back with was no. you can't do that until we're done evaluating it. Because if you go to tender, then it would, in essence, ineligible for future funding. So that was a question that we specifically asked as well. When they did follow up with them, as the board mentioned a couple weeks ago, they asked for what information we're being told that there's information missing, and they said, no, there's nothing missing, but if you could give us a cost on what it would be, then that week, by the end of that week, we actually had the updated cost because that's already in the works as the project is going through design. So we submitted that as well. We basically submitted to them the status of where the various projects are. And if the Salem project is at, well, basically 99% design complete. McClellan's Brook project is a tabletop. It's an estimate that's just 11 kilometers. Here's some costing that might come in. That's it. Nothing scientific behind it. The number could be off by as much as 50%, could be off by 75%, right? That's where, as you design something, you fine tune your costs. So as Salem progressed, when we put the initial application in for Salem, I'd say it was around 5 million. It's around 6 plus tax. So the net is about 6.2. I think there was about an $800,000 increase in the last year or 18 months, right? But as you refine the design, things change in the design, and that's where you basically end up. So that was basically our side of it. The applications were both submitted. Big thing. I did have a conversation with the deputy minister the other day asking for the minutes of the meeting where we approved them. So I supplied that to him. And then he came back and asked what were these that were submitted to us. Yes, they were. So there's a vacuum, or I don't know what to call
I guess if I may, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the one other thing that was brought up this morning was there was a densification report that was called. I hadn't heard the word garbage of it in there this morning, but I know what they're talking about, to have more homes closer together. Well, in a lot of our rural communities, we don't have more homes closer together, but we put in where we can, and it's not possible in many communities, but where it's possible, the only reason it's possible is because we got water a few years ago up to where the Whistleberry Market is there now. And then we were able to take that up to Springfield Estates. That's why it was tempting to look at if we can move that to Salem where they get such poor water. We only build our communities if we put in some of this infrastructure where it's possible, so that people will move into those communities. And there's a lot of good stuff happening in Salem. And the one I want to go over again is they are putting a recreational field in, similar to what's in other areas in our county, from River John to Springville to Little Harbor. And so they're trying to develop something there, because there's nothing in that whole end of the county extended far beyond Salem. So it's called the Salem Red area recreation. They're working hard at trying to get that going, and they were hoping this was coming through. And I kept telling them it was coming through. I didn't realize that we were going to get this this curveball sort of 3 weeks ago. We sent in last time in CEO, no, we sent in 3 applications at once. Springfield Estates, Abercrombie, what was the other one? Well, they sent in 3 at once. They all got approved. And yet this time we sent in 2, and we didn't even send it come close. So they were talking to me. I wasn't very hopeful when I left there. So we can't or don't do something ourselves, and Salem's going to stay the way it is, and it's not going to be a growth community, that's for sure. But that was the other question to you, is what are our options to be able to do something on our own? I know part of it is probably going to be splitting it to only deal with water, but you know, we know our costs on the water is around 2.7, I think. And there the possibilities that we could fund that on our own water.
Well, maybe let Logan jump in just on the technical side of that, but that would have to be something we could look at. Breaking two projects and looking at, is there a way to internally finance that either through.
I'd like to make a motion that we ask our staff to investigate what the possibilities are of funding the water part of the Salem project ourselves as a municipality. The possibility of doing that. So that's for a second.
Second. Deputy Warden. Move in second. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just have a question for the board. You mentioned when they told us that they contacted our MP's office in October. Why didn't they contact us? Is that question on?
Yeah, I asked that very question as to why we weren't contacted. Oh, it's not up to us to contact anybody. So I told them I'd been to the MP's office, asked them about it. They said they had no problems with the Salem project. If it doesn't get approved by the province, so it doesn't show up at the MP's office, 95 or more % of them, if they show up, if they're approved by the province, get approved by the Fed. So that's where the other, actually slightly bigger part of the funding comes from. But and Ken and the lady was there the day I was there, they said, we have no problem with that project. But they come to us, but they were notified through what, yeah, I don't know, but they were notified that they weren't the province looking to approve it. That was in October. So I was telling these people all along that, yeah, we're still waiting, but ever since October, it was, not even being considered.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye, nay.
If you want to let go.
Yeah, thank you. I think from a technical perspective, in regards to whether or not it would be feasible to complete the water system alone, it certainly would be. I've had a conversation with our consultant about that. The $2.7 million that Brian mentioned for the water system itself includes $250,000. So that's our consultant though did indicate that the pricing that they based their cost estimate on is based on similar projects that have been done as both water and sewer projects. So there is a chance that that $2.7 million could increase due to some reduced efficiency that yes, best value for your dollars to do a larger project together, just like anything else. So the $2.7 million, the best estimate we have right now, there's a chance that it could change depending on what the revised pricing is and what the contractors look at, what kind of overhead they do. But whether or not it's technically certain wouldn't be able to proceed without the sewer, and why in fact the sewer might be able to proceed after the fact if it were.
Questions? Seeing none?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering how many of the people that are sitting around tonight were in contact with their MLA. I think maybe you should just really put some pressure on, okay? Because nothing's going to happen unless you get her stamp of approval or the last stamp of approval from someone, okay? Now, sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't work, but it's just an avenue you got to take. Well, her pockets are an awful lot deeper than mine for her, so don't go like that, okay? I'm just thinking.
You want to turn your call?
Okay. It's just a thought, it's just a suggestion, okay? Because I know that Councillor Thompson and myself, we had great luck with bridges in our area by talking to me. Okay, and it's gotta be worth a try, okay? And if they don't call back, remember that. Thank you.
Mr. Thompson.
Just on what we were talking about there was the funding from the province. So are we moving forward with plans on Collinsbrook and Goldberg? Because what's the latest on that? Because people are gonna start asking.
Yeah, I guess like the application that was submitted 18 months ago is still there. There seems to be, as the wording said, a willingness to fund that, even though the overall project cost is potentially significantly higher. So we're trying to basically refine the costs on that, because if they award a project based on the application, then that's 7 million, I think, when the application was submitted, and that comes in at 12 million. They're running cost sharing on 7. So you're on the hook for the other 50% or millions, right? I think so.
So if I can make a suggestion, is it possible for us tonight to start working on the tender package for the design work for that project? Or is it something we would want to have covered under the project costs of the cost share fund? Because I can't make decisions based on what we suppose might be the case. I'd like to have some more information and building on what the projects were.
Yeah, and that's what Logan and the staff are working on now, is to kind of refine that number.
Yeah.
Say it's not a $7 million project, it's a $14 million project or whatever. I think so.
So was the cost inflation for the sale project the same as what you're supposing Colburn and
Yes, we're going to see you costs.
okay, so my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, my memory is 6.5 million for the Colburn Collinsbrook project. And that was the estimate, and then the estimate from 18 months ago for the sale project was around 5 million. So are we saying that we suspect it might double? Both of them double? That's the way it sounds to me, like it sounds to me like the Salem project, that estimate stayed the same, but Colburn Collinsbrook doubled. Which doesn't jive for me. That doesn't make any sense.
When the applications were submitted, though, we had a cost estimate for Salem.
Yeah.
That was at, I think, 50% design. Right?
Yeah.
We have a cost estimate for Collinsbrook at 0% design. So
Should we be budgeting to design, have that design work done so we can get that project off the books?
that'll be a council decision at some point, right?
So would motion to instruct staff to get an RFP together, would that be something we should be doing now?
That would define what those costs are for period.
I guess I made the motion to instruct staff to get an RFP ready. Go out there so we get that design work in the budget costs for Collinsbrook and Dorban. Ready. I think he deserves that as well. I'm making a motion.
Moving second. Board member.
Before I'm certainly not against moving ahead with the we have to drop them well for a project that was, they call it Thorburn down there today, but same project. I think. And, I made a motion before that we look into see if there's any possible way we can fund water, and I don't know, are we gonna run into a case where we need that money for both projects as we do that, or I just wouldn't want to see us get into that conflict. If we're just going into, to get our costs firmed up, I don't have a problem with it, but otherwise we might end up with, you know, we had prioritized the projects before, but think the water change up being involved.
I think staff will find that out when they do. Find one or say water project.
Yeah, we don't want to be depending on the same money.
No, I think they'll find out if there's money available either way. My personal opinion was I thought the both projects were at the design stage. I thought we hired a consultant to do both back 15 months ago. I guess we didn't. So that's, and the cost seems probably high, kind of over $10 million. Well, it will be that high or not, but it's something that we should see what it is. And if it costs within $10 million, then we can't do it. It's just too much money. Too much money to bring water to unlimited homes. So we'll have to look at it. Same as what we're looking at this. When we looked at saying $200,000, a lot of money for home, for government to fund it. So, you know, we have to look at that too. It'd be reasonable. Councilor Wallace.
Yeah, to me, we were here tonight, you know, and the people here from Salem come in and hear what their water project won't and can't do. I think it's, you know, we shouldn't be looking at the fog room and even talking about the fog room right now, because I went to bring something up to council one time and we shut down because we didn't have nothing on our agenda to show that, you know, what we wanted to work through. So to me, I think it's, you know, a little disrespectful to the people who, you know, Salem to turn around, they come here to try and get us to help them with their project. So let's get to their project and see what we can and can't do, and then we can also work on others.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree almost completely with what Dr. Boyle just said. We are here, we were here to put on the agenda some time ago. But clearly there's something nefarious, dirty that went on here. Some of us know what it is. And it's shameful, frankly shameful. And I think we owe it to the people of Salem to work on and explain to them what we can do, at least in the way of water, before we rush it off to spend on the next project. It's next in line, yeah, we should be working on it. But I think the motion is out of order. It's not on the agenda. Why are we bringing a motion on the Thorburn and Collins Brook water project with the water sewer project? It's simply not the agenda. Motion's out of order. I will not be supporting it.
Okay, we'll be moving aside and take it off and we'll put it on the future agenda.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, is there anything further? Seeing none, move on to the next. Accessibility report.
Sure. So the accessibility plans that circulated.
One of us can sell our own.
Plan has been developed through the accessibility committee. It's gone through, I think, a number of iterations, probably over the last few months since they've got a hold of it. So this is the product of I would say it's a good year's worth of work. Basically, at this point, the plan is recommended by council for approval. I don't know if
Councilor Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We consider this a living document. This is just
Let's get a glass of water.
this is just a presentation to council. It's our, as I said, it's a living document. There's going to be changes made throughout the document, but it's just, it's the first iteration that we're bringing to council to have for your perusal, to have a look at it. And it's, as I say, we have a committee that works on this. Our committee's probably met half a dozen times. And some of the things that we're looking at is make sure that the goods and services in our communities are all accessible, that our information and communications are accessible to all in our communities, that employment is accessible to all in our communities. One of the things that I had brought up is language as well. And there's a movement afoot, actually internationally, on plain English language. And language is a barrier to a lot of people. People that can read documents, and they're government documents, and we can all testify to this, is that there's a lot of problem with language in government documents that precludes a lot of people from reading it. It's very, very complicated and convoluted. So one of the things that I have brought up in terms of accessibility is that language that is used in our documents is all accessible to the people, and the citizens and the residents of our community. So those are some of the things we've touched on. It's fairly comprehensive. Like I said, it's a living document. This is really the first draft that we brought towards council, and so it's for your perusal, and hopefully we'll accept it as a plan. Thank you.
I just have a question on page 11. I read them all, but on the top there, it says elected representatives must be a Canadian citizen and 18 years old and live in the community. Should that not say municipality? Because you don't need to live in the community that you're actually representing. As long as you're from in the municipality, is that?
Anyone once again, please?
On page 11.
Yeah.
It says, and live in the community. Can you not represent the community as long as you're in the municipality? At the very top, the third sentence. I could live in Westall and represent River John. People would allow me.
No.
No.
No, I mean, within the boundaries of Westall, I guess. It's just that. I mean, yeah. Well, I could live in Oakwell and represent River John.
We can look at that as an edit. That's fine.
Yeah. That's right. You and me.
I don't know if would you like to speak to this at any level?
Yeah, thank you. I think I ran to Washington. Yeah, no, basically, the accessibility advisory committee, I've done a lot of work on this. We're mandated by the province to put this together. We sort of been behind on that, trying to get something together that makes sense for our community, and work off some things that some other areas have done as well. So I think it's a good plan, and certainly edits can be made after the fact. And the goal, I'm sure this is mentioned, will be to take this and then to work this into the more, this is the plan, and then the sort of action plan will follow this as a subsequent document to actually say directly what we plan to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to compliment the committee, in particular, Councilor Dr. Boyle's clearly a ton of work into this. And I guess when I thought of accessibility, I thought of physically disabled, thinking people that are hearing impaired, sight impaired, and even now, including people who basically can't read. We seem to be turning those out in record numbers, unfortunately. Yeah, that's a lot here. Over the next 2 decades or so, we'll begin to see the necessities of implementing many of these strategies and the costs. But it is theoretical. It is only fair that all citizens should have equal access to whatever services we are providing. You can't make them hear better or see better or fix their physical disabilities. Many people are fixed their reading disabilities, video program. But it is true that governments, bureaucrats tend to use flowery language. Not everyone is going to understand. So there's a lot of good work here, and I want to compliment them for that. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Peel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Councilor Parker did speak to some of my comments there. I too am impressed with the amount of work that went into this. Go on page 14, we talk about the public spaces and that the municipal building will undergo an accessibility audit. I guess I too, when I think of accessibility audit, would think about things of mobility, like elevator, parking and stuff, and not really treating it through the lens of maybe someone who's very impaired or blind, etc. The province, I believe, has mandated some accessibility as well. My question would be, where does this fit into the accessibility? I guess going back to that comment I was when the province was doing this about accessibility, I was, power doors and elevators and stuff. Is that stuff included, the hearing impaired, that's a different terms, is that included in the accessibility studies of the province?
Yeah, so the province has a multi-stage approach to it. So they have, they look at it basically very similar to the 5 pillars that we have here. So they're developing standards as we move forward. So like built environment, there's standards pretty much for that today that everybody will move towards, but then they have working groups on employment, various other standards will come as we move forward. So it wasn't everything all at once. It is something that over the next decade, we will need these barriers. All right. So some of the recommendations that might come forward on certain things aren't there yet. But there are working groups at the provincial level that are working on a number of things. The built environment is fairly there today. It's the standards. So when it talks about our building will undergo an audit, it's to meet those standards that exist today.
And it speaks to, that you mentioned, not just physical, but it's already partially provided. These all, not just certain.
So if it's something that maybe the council will have to put their budget line and create the improvements that we can make to better serve our citizens.
Yes, and one thing that we, as an example, relatively small budget brought up is paint around the building has been identified as something that's actually pretty good that we have here, but that's like a simple thing that can make it some good minor motivation for building improvements that that's key specifically. So this was
No, that was something that I had just kind of learned how to add into our building with the future budget line item for. Thank you. Great work.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I want to echo what others have said. I know there's a tremendous amount of meetings and work took place to get to this point. And it's one thing to have it in writing, another thing to start turning it into action. And that's going to be the real test here is if, we need some reports back, I guess, from this committee on a regular basis as to what items that they're actioning and what order, so that we know that it is progressing. And if the committee is going to continue, and I think their job is more than just to come up with this report, but to continue to make sure it does get action. And one question I had was this coordinator talking about at the end, the accessibility coordinator. It says on page 17 that the CAO is responsible for implementing a plan and assigning an accessibility coordinator. So that's not a new job, is it? That's assigning of somebody that be added to them, or somebody like Logan or one of the recreation people or somebody? So that becomes a contact person then, for anybody who has concerns. Okay, and the other thing I want to bring up is our meetings here. They're pretty darn difficult for people to hear and see anyway. Who don't have any disabilities. And I'm sure that somebody has a hearing disability, or a visual disability, it's even worse. So I think we need to improve. The few days I was home and had to listen from online, it was very difficult to hear a lot of stuff. But it was also more difficult to see any beyond the 4 or 5 people that understand. And you can see there tonight, in that picture, you can't tell who's at front of the room. You might see that, might be able to tell who's in the first 2 seats on each side. So when I'm at these Divert Nova Scotia meetings, I think I mentioned this maybe just when I can't remember, but they have these owls, they come. 2 owls sit in the middle of the room on little tables, and that allows visibility all around the table. Somebody that's attending virtually or online can see the complete table instead of just seeing the people right at the end. And I know we have a little camera down there, but that only captures the people at the end. That's for people with screwed visibility. People with hearing. I can't imagine how anybody with a disability in those fields would, but I think that's something we have to look at in this building if we really want people to follow us, our meetings. Just wanted to bring that up at the time because I had trouble, I didn't have a disability of either hearing or seeing, but I did that thing. Thank you.
Anything else?
Okay.
Yeah, Lori? One?
Thank you. Most of what I was going to say is been covered because I'm going to check on that accessibility coordinator was interested in that as well. A good first attempt at this. I know it's a huge project and it's going to take a couple of years for us to get everything up to the status we want to see. One of them we talk about maintaining streets and sidewalk maintenance. I'd like to see something in here people for installing sidewalks in areas that need them. Maybe that would be part of the overall plan, I'm not sure, but I would like to see the construction of sidewalks too, because I think that's important in the canon for accessibility for a lot of people. And just, can we expect from the accessibility committee like a list, I don't know, quarterly or whatever for the, especially the low hanging fruit right now, maybe we can pick up on and get done, like painting, this sort of thing. So could we anticipate seeing items like that going back to council that would see this progressing, because I really want to see this progressing and see things happen so that we can at least show that we're doing something. And I think it's important, like Barbara said, about budget line, and that would be important too, because we're going to have money allocated to do some of these changes. I think time is now to get that as a budget line so that we know that money to become available whenever we start doing the work towards the project. But other than that, I think it's a great first level in let's see.
Yeah. So just some additional background that we've got some information down on the action plan portion of this as well. So that's currently also being reviewed by the members of the committee. Expected to be included in our next meeting. So on the adoption of this policy for this new plan, rather, that would allow us to take the actionable items to the next step. And then certainly updates based on our monthly payments.
Anybody else? So just one thing in top priority, it says ensure accessibility taxi services available to the public. We will follow solving and seeing how many on-demand accessibility taxis are needed. Now, Like, how do you govern that? Like, how do you do that? Because in the county, we don't have any taxi service, right?
Yeah, and I mean, some municipalities get really hardcore. Yeah. Actions. Yeah, obviously. So I think it would be. There are lots of different, not a lot of different, but there are accessible options. It could be as simple as including that in an accessibility page in Jira that says, I have accessibility issues.
So you're looking at town taxi services. They all taxi service for them. Yeah.
We have to put it in the service together.
Yeah, just because we don't, because I do think we have the ability to lease them. Well, we do, but there's not in the town, so it's the towns that have the taxi service.
So I think, yeah, and to me, what comes to mind is spreading information about services.
Yeah, okay, no, that's great.
No, good point.
Okay, thank you. Something else? Seeing none, moving on. The next is the land use planning. There should be a recommendation to approve this at the next council.
I'll move that.
Will it? Who will second it? All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
And by nay, motion carried. Okay, the next is the land use planning tender award recommendation. Roll.
And you still, they're pretty here is where the municipality is required by the provincial government to put together minimum land use planning standards. January 25th, votes on February 15, find a consultant to provide proposals for these planning services to, with the deliverables being municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw. We received 3 bids, 3 different companies, WFP, Propan, and Upland. I know the scoring is a little bit hard to see in the what's been presented, but we had an established rubric that went out as part of the tender package, which we followed and scored based on everything from project quality and credentials, which included made up 75% of the evaluation, and then the remaining 25%, which is by price. The price was prorated based on what they were compared to what was the price. Lowest bid price was Upland Planning and Design, followed by Foten, WSP. The overall scoring, which I don't think you can quite see particularly well there, was 85% for WSP, 83% for Foten, and 92% for Upland. I was very pleased with the tender package's response that we received. It was thorough, very comprehensive, clearly meeting the needs of our objectives. Each company had an excellent track record in Atlantic Canada and some of them nationwide in managed mining services. So I'm very pleased with the response, especially with the type delivery term of the weeks. So ultimately, based on the scoring rubric that we presented, highest score having gone to Upland Planning and Design, we recommend that the award of the standard go to Upland for $30,000. $139,100 excluding adjustment.
I'll make that motion. Thank you. Council Robinson, second, Councilman Peel. Council Gordon, did you lift your hand up first?
Oh, first down the street, professional government, but I thought we hired some staff that's new staff member. This, our own plan for our company, under our own building, not to develop some company somewhere else that we have to pay an additional $139,000 for. And what I'd be afraid of, it'd be just like that time we had to make things right with the fire departments, and we did it out of District, Ontario. There's different ones over the years, insurance. There's been quite a few things we put tenders out to get help, but I find when we're not doing it right here in-house, that it'll be done, they'll compare us to some other community somewhere else, and we'll just have to do with it. They had planned for years and years and years, and all kinds of different things stuck to the people. Picked the county and plan and never went very good, as long as I can remember. And I can remember McLeod School being full. I would say it was like in 1976 or 77 when I went to it. And the commission told them. Luckily, there was no trees in the air at that time. But anyway, it's just that serious. So, and there's places that just take it for granted. This is the way it's going to be done, that we would just couldn't imagine. But anyway, that's just my opinion on that, and I'll be voting against this time. Thank you.
Alden, do you want to follow up why we went to consult?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councilor Weaver, as well. I certainly am also very happy that we have some development staff here as well. So we did hire Jeremy last year as our development officer. The role of a development officer versus planner is different, but related. And it is a comprehensive document that we'll be looking for here. So currently Jeremy's tab is filled with his development officer. Which is expected to be increased, and he has been supportive in helping support some of this scoping of this overall project. I will say upland, so the recommended bidder that we recommend based on the scoring is a Nova Scotia-based company, smaller staff. Their project lead that they have proposed for this test, it's not from Victor County, but has some links to the community. So I think that bodes well for the county municipality in a project. They have, and all these companies that I mentioned before have interest in. So, and I certainly take Councilor Weaver's point that this hasn't been done in Victor County for our municipality ourselves, but it has been done for some other nearby communities. And in fact, Upland Design they've completed the plans for Cumberland County municipality, St. Mary's District municipality, their updates, and Queens municipality region of Queens and South Shore, and they're currently doing a comprehensive plan. Instead, provisions for those within the Eastern District Planning Division and County and Vanessa County and Lake County, that well as the county for allowed to do. So I do think there's of all the consultants that, and again, I was very happy to, but all the consultants that we received, they support tonight as well on knowing the needs of our rural municipality and one similar to us, though not us specifically. We've been very clear that we're going to be looking for Victor County specific solutions. That they're going to be working closely with myself and Jeremy and Brian and other staff people as required. We're not going to be, led by the nose through this process. We're going to be the ones leading the process with help of these consultants who have all the industry best management practices. And I believe a proven track record is not important. I think it's going to be important to us to get out to our communities and this is something that I noted specifically to consultants, is that we want to be each and every district, so that whether it's through the planning phase or through the drafting of the documents, so that each and every community has a specific chance to voice their opinion, have their opinions known. And I think we always keep the focus on on pushing a major kind of solution for that, something that will be accepted by the province, but not something that's necessarily been done somewhere else. So certainly appreciate Councillor Dewar's comments, and I'm also very happy that we have bolstered their planning and development staff through the hiring of Jeremy. I just think that the amount of work that's going to be in this and the current workload that staff has also requires us to look at some outside assistance with this as well. With all due respect to our opinions here.
Thank you both. Board member.
Mr. Chair, I want to echo what Councilor Dewar just said. It is vitally important. Anybody that was around here, or can remember being around here in the 70s, early 70s, right through late 70s probably, planning became a dirty word and still is to many people. Not that they're being planned, but the way it was done. So we have to be so careful. I'm not against spending the money if we get good results with the money. And I think the fact that other councils have, have gone with these, what's the name outside of it? We've gone with these people is a good sign, but most of them are probably still in the process mode. But if anybody took note of what happened in East Hants about a month or two ago, that's a path we don't want to get in. They went down the same path that this county did in the 70s and ran into so much opposition that they had to cancel it altogether. That was only 2 months ago. We're not talking back in the 70s here. So it can happen again for us. We have to make sure that we talk about public meetings, that this is presented to the public in the right way. And yes, we can present it that it wasn't our idea, it was theirs, and therefore don't blame us. But we are going to complain if it's not what people want. People do not want to be told what to do with their property and what they can and can't do with their property. That's what ended the one, and that's what caused this council to withdraw from planning commission for 50 years or whatever they were out of it. So I think it's really, really important. I mentioned this to Brian Wayne several times. Wayne was around probably for the tail end of that, certainly when we were no longer in the planning commission. And people lost their jobs over this, and it was a horror show for quite a few years. So we have to be really careful. People know the intent. People know what we're not going to do. Because once the word gets out that this is what they plan to do to us, and you can have all the community meetings you want, but you've already got people all around up. You have to approach it in a way that's open to people and they understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what we're not doing. I want to put that caution there because this could blow up on the Superior.
Councilor Bowles.
Yeah, I think it's already blowing up on us. I'm getting calls, the fact that I loaded to try and find out what was all about, because then they're not voted. I was sort of shocked around when people were coming after me saying, well, I think it's a bunch of bullcrap because I never heard nothing about it. And then all of a sudden, Logan told me what the government wants us to do with everything, but people are just up in arms. Or, I mean, I got a list right now of people saying, okay, when the consultation meetings start, I want to be informed. Because, I mean, the stuff out there, like, and slightly, as to say, it's like you not for food, but like, you're allowed 4 chickens. If you want to put up a fence, you have to get a permit to do it. There'll be no grandfather clauses for fences. You can be fined, you can be, there's so much stuff when people are just up in arms, so I don't know, there's a lot of them from, a lot of the districts in here that have called me and asked me questions and sent me emails and everything, asked me about it. I said, well, as far as I'm concerned, I go ahead, help them, and the way I just said, I can't see a councillor voting for anything that's the municipality, the people that live in the municipality want for the separation is, you might as well just say goodbye next election, because it's, they're the people that want it, they're the people that should be saying what they want, what they don't want. And I agree with Chester that, I think we could, a lot could be done on our own in all these important things.
Well, just to your point there, do the people think that the fences have to be put up and things like that, but I don't think that's the case in this.
Yeah, thank you. We have had a lot of interest already, and we can already sense the anxiety to go into our community. I spent a lot of time, and I think others have as well, over the past week or so, since this information was posted. We wanted to get out, put a Facebook post out to say at a high level, so this is what's being required, but we also want people to know that they can contact us. We put together a specific email address that people can get us directly to planning@montreal.ca. My phone number's out there. So we've been dealing with people, and it does seem as though a lot of the anxiety is coming from small farms, hobby farms, the sort of smaller agricultural sector. So I've been talking to people specifically, those that have been calling and emailing to say that, and the province has sort of guidelines to the municipal planning exercise. Directing them to that, directing them to some of what other municipalities can do. You know, we're not going into this with any preconceived notion about what has to be included or should be in these specific rules. We have all eyes for our ears open, and that's why we want to get out to the public. We want to have direct access to the public so that they can get their comments to us, so that they're technically savvy, technologically savvy. And you know, no opinion is a bad opinion. It's questions that people have, and I think people are rightfully anxious with it. It's nothing new that we haven't had here. And you know, people I think currently enjoy the opportunity, enjoy the fact that they're able to, you know, take advantage of the properties as they see fit. And I think everything that I heard from every councillor is that spoke to me about it is that they want to see that continue, coupled with, you know, a reasonable respect for neighbors and that sort of thing. So I think we owe it to the public to have open and honest conversations about these items and to give them real answers and to make everybody out there, public consultation, how to be involved in the process so that they can be as confident as possible. There are going to be disagreements in this process. It's inevitable, but I think that, you know, the more that we're out there, you know, everybody's not going to be happy. The more that we're out there, I think the better. So we've taken a very open and honest approach, and we look forward to continuing to do that. And I think the public deserves it. I don't think that. I think that our current staffing resources are too limited to put together a plan that would be accepted by the province at this time. I think we have to look at other options. But I do think that, you know, we definitely see the anxiety that's causing. But we're forced into a corner here by the province, and even though we believe in good planning standards too, this is, you know, real reason why we're doing it now. So we have to get some kind of action.
We knew this was coming, just that it was delayed due to COVID, right? I think it was supposed to be completed this year.
We've got, yeah, we do have an extension to 2025.
That was 2023, but we knew it was coming, just that the COVID delayed. Councilor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to repeat a lot of what's already been said. This has great potential to blow up in our face. Being much older than Councillor Dewar, I recall very clearly that meeting at the cloud school. And if I recall, there were several veterans there. This was only 30 years after the war. They talked going back to the barricades. That's how serious they were. And the gentleman from Alabama has been a resident of this county now for the last 45 years. And quite frankly, smarter than all of us put together. He had no success. He had no success. He just threw his hands up in the air. Maybe our strategy should be to make sure we come up with a poor plan and the government rejects it. We keep doing that until about 2081. That maybe should be our strategy. But seriously, we should, and I'm asking council to invite, assuming the successful tender, come here and hear our concerns first, before we even start deciding any public meetings.
That's meeting one.
Yeah,
First thing.
should be here, because this is an extremely delicate issue. I'm intelligent enough to understand that planning has both advantages and disadvantages, and when it does, this is the part that offends most rural independent Tectonians, is it puts restrictions on your land. Your land that you bought to pay for, your land that you pay taxes on. And there's going to be restrictions on it. Most people don't like that. So if we can keep that to a minimum, make the plan as generic as possible, except in areas like, well, I'll use Abercrombie's example, because they had an incident 20-some years ago, where without a plan, they got an industry that they didn't want. And the council of the day went to work with the group, got a plan, and for his efforts, he got voted out of office. So it's a very, very delicate issue. And we do need planning, especially in areas with densification. Okay, but in most rural areas, okay, you're going down to Lismore, going down to Loganville, or going to Lansdowne, don't need a plan. All they need to say is this is general forest agriculture. Okay, and if they want an exception to that, they'd cover the application. And that should cover vast swaths of our county. But when you get into more settled areas, then you do need a plan. And in fact, both ways. It protects citizens against, I don't know, giant pig farm in their midst. But it also puts some restrictions on it. But a lot of what's being said is just it's stuff being fed through the social media that's really not worth paying any attention to. Thank you.
Councilor Thompson.
Well, there's two sides of the story, okay? So if you are representing an area that recently received a junkyard in their midst, Chester knows the one I'm talking about. And it's right around homes. And it's an area of the county that doesn't have that. People look after their properties. And this junkyard just appears right next to a home. Who do they call? Call the counselor. You know what the counselor's message is right now? Not what you can do. So it cuts both ways. It's not fair to the people that look after the properties and some business or activity that isn't really part of that community comes in and evaluates your property. If it's not dangerous and if it's not unsightly, there's little you can do. So I don't know if that would cover this off or not, but we have a duty to protect our residents against activities that would impact them negatively. So we have to, it cuts both ways. Gordon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A lot of what my brother said and Mr. Thompson, what I was going to say anyways, that there is a need. You have to be very careful where the need is and how much we point it. We talked here before a couple of years ago when this first came up about, having planning for our suburban areas and having planning for our very rural areas, in West Branch, Tom, and Steve mentioned. Where very little planning is needed, really. Other than, I think sometimes we do need specific problem areas that we've had, and the one that Andy brought up with junkyards is one that I dealt with for quite a while too. That may have to be incorporated in our plan somehow. That how do we deal with that problem? In terms of if you want to call it whatever. But I think it's really important that company or those representatives come here first, and they need to get a good history lesson on what happened here in Sevens. They need to know what's happening here. A lot of that's still very fresh in people's minds. Grandfathers telling grandsons, and so if we don't get the company that's working for us looking at that and not looking at this what it is in the other counties, this county is different than those other counties. I don't know what the history of Cumberland or Antigonish is, but I know what it is in Pictou County. And the one area they have to stay clear of is not telling a farmer in particular, but any person in the rural area, your son or daughter cannot build a house up in that corner. That's what really set off the explosion in the seventies, was being told that your son or daughter is not going to be allowed to build on your corner of your field. And that's what set it off, and then it just got really bad. So I think we need to make sure that that company is well voiced in the history of what took place. Thank you.
Anybody else? Not? I think that they'll look at what requirements are by the government, right? The minimum plan. I don't think we're going to expand on that at all. I think we're just going to do bare minimum to get our plan in place and leave it at that. But I agree, in suburban areas, for instance, in the village of Thornton, a guy put a sawmill right in the middle of the village. Okay? Residents are, there's a whole bunch of residents around that area. He's up there cutting wood all hours of the day and night. So, you know, there is a need for certain land in certain areas. And like I said, when you get out in the more rural areas, it's not as big concern. But you got a bump of homes, somebody throws that in there, it makes a problem for everyone. There is a need for it, but you gotta be very careful how much you need to look at. Anyway, anybody else? Motion on the floor. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Online, nay.
Hey,
Nay, put your right hand up. 2 nays.
for the name, because I'm sure we'll be fighting someday, and I'll be able to say I told you.
No matter who we get, it would be our people or the consultants. They're still, well, I don't think you have to worry about having them get that off.
I'm putting it.
That's a quick question there, Randy. Is it passed tonight with this one, or now does this go to the general meeting and then pass today?
So it has to go to council or the appropriate.
Just because I think the people should be let know that the next meeting this will be voted on, so maybe they want to show their, you know, come here and put their.
What we agreed to hire a consultant to help us through this process.
Pardon?
That we agreed to hire a consultant to help us through this process. Well, I think we'll be in big trouble if we did it on our own. I think we're a lot better.
People you wouldn't read the calls to get the people are comfortable there.
About the consultant,
Pardon?
about the consultant.
About what the government's trying to push on them. A lot of what they're thinking is that they're thinking that.
That's what I'm saying, is two separate things, right?
Pardon?
This is two separate items that you're talking
I
about.
know what you're saying, but they're still going to be telling us what to do. Or recommending that.
He recommends, it's up to this, up to the committee, and then it'd be up to the council to decide what things.
But that's a lot of money to spend there to turn around and the people turn around and tell us, listen, we don't want this. That's all they got. But Chester said there earlier, we had the firemen. Well, look what happened with it. Just,
Nothing always by law, just like all of the stuff. And
Anyway,
then.
It was passed, motion was passed. Next is the District 2 streetlight request, 708 Chip Road, Council One.
Get room, you get girls, something, and more.
Oops. Secondly, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, now by name, motion carried. Any community announcements? Mr. Thompson.
Volunteers at the Plymouth Fire Department have organized an event this Saturday. It's like a community open house from 3 to 5 p.m. to meet your neighbors, members of the fire department and ladies auxiliary. And they are offering up a comfort style supper. We serve local quantities last. So that's this Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m.
Councilor Boyle.
I just have a couple here. The first one is just the Hillside Hall will be having their kitchen party, which they have every Friday night from 6:30 to 9, and like lunch served, and it's $5 to get in, and the entertainment get into that. But also, I got a little bit of sand hills that are around in the The Hillside Girls Club that started by Anna Kaleiko many years ago, well, in fact, 77 years ago. And then was taken over by Alan Murphy and Sandra Hattie. Due to health problems and everything, they had to abstain and there'd be no more Hillside Girls Club. So after 77 years, I mean, these people, we presented a plaque to them on their 75th, and it's being awarded, and it's, so it's really an accomplishment, 77 years to run this, and it's sad to see it go, but I want to let them know that we really appreciate it, but thank you.
Yes. Been a long time.
Yeah.
Councilor Carter.
To ask your indulgence, it's not really a community announcement, but I did want to speak about this. A wonderful publication. Best one I've seen today. I'm particularly impressed by the 4-page centerfold promoting the advertising of fire departments, especially the youth program for our fire departments. And there was 3 pages in there telling people how to get connected. If we're at, if that's what we call, and there's just a ton of information in there. You can mention every counselor, their email and their phone number. Just, I think it's Sue Ann's work, so I don't want to compliment her if it is, but it's a ton of information in there. Very, very well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue Ann. Councilor Doyle.
Thank you very much. And I agree. It's nice. Getting bigger and better all the time. But on the back page, it said about citizen appointments. They changed the dates from April 1st to March 31st. I thought it was the end of the year almost. Who changed those dates? I don't remember that so clearly.
So we, basically, people, some of them expired in November. So we're late getting to them, so it's just the application is basically, by the time we get an appointment, it'll be April 1.
So it's not written down somewhere that it got set in stone date?
No,
Okay, I thought we did, I guess, so,
Yeah.
during the tear strip off, they were doing that stuff.
there's no, it's not November to November or anything like that.
Okay, then I didn't notice you changed, so that meant I read it. Thank you.
Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to add my voice to the comments made, and thanks to Ann for the excellent work. Because I've heard different people say to me over time, that's so magazine you folks put out, you know? I read that from cover to cover, and then turn it upside down to read the game. I mean, they don't get much in newspapers these days, so whatever they have in the notes is going to be read a lot. But I think it does a lot for our municipality. Between that and getting our meetings online and whatnot, it used to be that we were just kind of here, kind of hitting, and nobody hardly knew, well, what are you supposed to do anyway? Just pick up the garbage, read something. Now they know what we do. They know something with the budget, they know something with all this stuff. But I think it's been a great step to have a communication person here and to have this, but certainly our recreation people, Cindy mostly, I guess, did as best you could, combining it with a whole lot of other jobs before. But the new format and the amount of information that's packed in there, I think it stands well for. I think when they play the music, it's up to them. Yes. Yes, good job, sir. Thank you.
Councilor One.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to let you know, the library is having a chili and home fundraiser. And the cost of the tickets are $50 each, but you get a tax deductible receipt for $25, as well as a handcrafted bowl created by local artists Denise Martin, Carrie Ann, or Sarah Monica. So if anyone would like a ticket, I have them waiting at the library, and it's on Friday nights at the problem.
Okay, is there any emerging resolutions? Seeing none? All meeting adjourned.
With Chairman, I'll call the financial services meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral unceded territory of Mi'kmaq people. First, I need the approval of the agenda. Okay, the movement and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded nay. Motion carried. Is there any error or omissions, corrections to the minutes of January 16th? Is there any errors, omissions, corrections to the minutes of January 16th? Last time, any errors, omissions, corrections to those minutes of January 16th? Hearing none, we'll consider those minutes approved. First, we have reports for recreation. Pleasures, council. Moved by Councilor Turner, second by Councilor Watt. Any questions? Go ahead, Warden Parker.
A couple of things here, the MPAL physical activity plan, so personally was in that position, so Neil has taken a full-time job with Petco. So when this first started, we were sharing with all the other towns, other municipalities on this MPAL position. So I'd just like to know where we're at in terms of future of that position now. I did read in there somewhere where they were seeking somebody, whatever, but we have 2 recreation people now. We only had 1 that started. Are we going to continue, and what is the role and the future role of the MPAL person? Is it just for trails, or what is it?
Go ahead.
So as the report says, Sally has been moving on in April, so it is to, I guess at this point, there is just a town ourselves left. All the other units have gone. So basically what we have been using the MPAL program around is, it is about activity, physical activity. So one of our primary goals has been around trail development, things of that nature, as well some other physical programs. So there is a strategy that is being kind of developed for the next 5 years as well. The town had hired consultants to help facilitate that plan. So it's really, if there's other goals that we'd like to see incorporated in, then we have that opportunity to get them in. But over the last little bit, we have been kind of focusing on trail development and some of the other activities that can be held in rural
Yes, sir. The real question is, did we consider whether with 2 recreation people now that we could do what we needed done? Not I mean the trail thing, but could those 2 people look after it, or do we still need that?
The discussion that we did have internally was that this still is a benefit for us. We do get the 3rd person, we get it in essence cost shared by the province, so it does help leverage some dollars type things. So we could look at it, and it is a little different. It is focused on activity, it's activity based, and so we did have that discussion whether or not it made sense to continue. Recommend that it continue. So that's where we're at right now, is recommending that it continue, but we also have to kind of go through a search and determine whether find somebody qualified to.
Okay, we'll see where that one goes. I have one more question, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Gut bridge restoration. Submitted application to the Canadian Trails Federation for a federal grant to support fabrication of the new bridge. The grant will be awarded lottery style to a short list of applicants rather than by a scoring system. What does that mean under a lottery style? If 3 companies bid, you just pull it out of that?
I would say, yeah, the projects are submitted, it's a lottery style as opposed to them saying this project scored a 90, this project scored a 70.
Whether you get the grant and not who's gonna build the bridge.
No, it's whether you get the grant.
Aim on that is who's gonna build the bridge.
Yeah, no, it's the opposite. It's whether your project gets funded.
Okay, but that is different. I wondered what that meant, lottery stuff. Okay, thank you for the explanation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Warden. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we have the communications report for the month of January. Moved by Deputy Warden Murray, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Any questions or comments on the communications report? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we have the emergency services report for the month of January. Moved by Councilor Boyles,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Turner. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we have the wards report for the month of January. Moved by Councilor Dewar,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Turner. Go ahead, Councilor Turner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. Attended emergency meetings at the library cost conflict. What was the reason that we had to have an emergency meeting? Cost conflict.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair.
Yes,
Very similar to what we discussed earlier tonight to do with the Salem project. All of these projects, because of inflation, because supply chain and whatnot, have gone way up in price. So they had a price established for the library project, and when the tenders came in, it was not only over, but way over. And so decisions had to be made to continue, to drop the project. You know, they've been working very hard, and Councilor Quad is also on this committee to working at this, especially Troy and Eric, been working very hard to try and save it. And that's really what the word is, because, you know, and they have gotten, you know, I suppose I shouldn't mention many cats out of the bag, but they have gotten, you know, additional help and funding from various sources. Haven't had to come back to councils at this point looking for additional help. But yeah, it was an emergency. We're hanging by our fingernails here almost, you know, and so far so good, but it's still, my mind is, or to my knowledge, nothing's been finalized at this point, and the cost has been closed for 4 or 5 months because they thought they would be, they're still hoping to be ready to go this spring. So, you know, that's why it was emergency.
What's over, what percentage would be over?
I don't know how much I want to say tonight. Did you feel comfortable saying that, Councilor Watt? It was quite a bit.
Just a percentage.
Probably 50%. Yeah.
The majority of money is there. I think it's just getting some, pocket into our head. I think it's, just when we had to break the project up, I think that's what the meeting's for. It wasn't necessarily clear up there that the project's going to go. I think it's probably around the weight during one to get in. I think that's what we're trying to achieve.
But the original shortfall before a lot of deals were made, it was a lot of money you're trying to work with.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one more thing I want to say if there's no more questions. So this week ago, Monday, we had a meeting and the CEO and I were both there to do with transit. And so it was asked of us, each municipality, as you probably aware or read the papers or read somewhere, they're receiving new buses for the transit authority for Southern New Glasgow that's running now and seem to be doing quite well. They're paying the bills and the lack and everything, and so they're looking at spreading their wings on. That was the original suggestion. Start with those two, then spread out. You know, once you get a stable ridership, and they have that now. Plus, they have these new buses coming in. But it's not for this budget year. It's going to take a year for the buses to arrive. But they want us to ask, are there any, in major towns, it's different, but in the rural area, are there any communities, anybody's district, where they feel that there would be a demand for rural service, say 1 day a week? I'll just, as I did with Wayne Brown, with the use Scottsburg as an example. They have for 1 day a week, the bus whether to Scottsburg, in Baxter line, quickly, they made a pickup there. Then they would join on to this. So the Glasgow loop is going on now, they drop out the hospital, the mall, wherever. And then at a certain time, you would get back your feeder bus to come in from Scottsburg, maybe at 3:00 in the afternoon, you go back home. Wouldn't work for everybody, but it would work for some people that don't have any transportation. So that could be in Eureka, or could be in Lionsy, or places probably where there's a fair concentration of people. So you might get enough to pick up to make it worthwhile. And if we decided, yes, we want to take part in this in some way, then the question was, how much money are you willing to put in? And they can tell you how much service you can get. But if there's no areas interested, then you don't need to go any further. Unless somebody says, I think it'd be good in my district, looked at, that's all we said we do, is take it back to our council and see if there was anybody thought that transit in the area, in the rural area, might be worthwhile. That's what it is. And if it is, then fine, we can look into it further as reasonable, something to tell them that they need to know before our next council meeting. Know in 2-3 weeks, or 1 week, so yeah.
Mr. Ward, would you like people to email you those responses or?
Sure, yeah, a little time to think about it, a little time to talk to the people in your area, sometime over the next week or whatever, if you think there's some interest in your communities, and it might be feasible, it has to be reasonably close, like it'd be hard to say, well, we're gonna make a trip up here or down, pick your people up. You know, that'd be a bit of a stretch, I imagine, but the ones I named, they're kind of within a, 5, 6, 7 mile, distance might be doable, we don't know what the cost would be, they'll tell us once we, tell them if there's any interest.
So should we say that councillors that have interested areas to email you by the end of the month?
This 20, yes, that gave us a week, yeah, that'd be good.
Can I ask a question? Have they made plans to come to town to pick up? Have they made plans to come across the causeway?
That's up to the town picture, how much they want to put into it. They want to put into it, the Trenton and Western are seen as the next two easy ones, or easier. And Petro is a bit more restricted, so again, Petro Council has to decide how much money would we want to put into this. So then it would be how many trips can we make, 1 day a week, 2 days a week, or whatever. So that's a kind of decision for the council in town.
Okay. Right, any other final questions on the works report? Go ahead, Councilor Turner.
I don't have a question, but I certainly, you'll certainly get an email from me for District 8. I mean, it's probably the most logical of any of the districts that could use the service, because, we're right on the route from Trenton to New Glasgow, or from where Westfield Road is, from Westfield to Glasgow. So anyway, you'll be getting an email from me.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Turner. All right, seeing no more questions or comments, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we have accounts paid for the month of January.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Parker. Seconded by Councilor Elliott. Any questions on accounts paid for the month of January 2023? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we have our D-transfer tax for information purposes only. And you can see again that we've kind of hit a new kind of trend.
Still very helpful.
Any questions or comments on the D-transfer tax? Seeing none, we'll move on. For taxes receivable report. Again, this is for information purposes only. As you see, we processed almost just over $236,000 worth of payments for taxes last month. Yes, go ahead, Councilor Waddle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just Brian Press, is that, I think we'd asked this question last month, if that was in line with the payments we're receiving, the amount outstanding for the tax collection?
It may be slightly higher than where we were last year, but also it's hard to compare because your tax roll also increases year to year, but as a percentage, we're probably still very close to what it would have been last year, but the physical dollar amount is probably still a little higher. But I do believe we've set it with other skills. I think they want to first and better rate. So stuff.
Any other further questions or comments on the tax receivable report? Hearing none, we'll move on. We've had lots of correspondence and circulated specifically for the breakfast programs and the backpack program. And also acknowledging our Happy that was here last month for her heroic duties. Moving on, we'll start with a recreation funding request. We have 2 recreation funding requests this month. First is for Victor County Traffic Ski Club for amount of $1,600. This is a capital grant for repairs following Fiona. And the second is the Lismore District Recreation Committee of $2,000 for youth leadership programming. Okay, so by Councilor Dewar. Seconded by Councilor Elliott.
Question on that.
Okay, go ahead, Councilor Palmer.
The grants, capital grants for recreation is $1,000.
It's a maximum.
So it's nice. Give them the max.
Okay, so do you want to change your motion to set amount request $1,000? Okay, second agrees with that. Okay, go ahead, Councilor Deputy Warden Murray.
There's 1,000 left.
Warden Parker.
This is to show my ignorance, I guess, but where is the Picture County Traffic Ski Club?
It's almost directly below.
All the way down below there. Okay. I think I have seen it from when I read that.
Get here on Wednesday nights, Sunday afternoon after church.
Okay, now everybody. Thank you.
Almost directly across from Riverview Dover.
Okay. To drive out, now we know. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to give both Pictou County Traffic Ski Club the maximum of $1,000 for capital grant and the Lismore District Recreation Committee also the maximum of $1,000 for the youth leadership programming. Theirs isn't capped. So the only one that's capped is Pictou County Traffic Ski Club. So should we make these separate motions? Probably, okay. So my mistake. So let's do that again. So would you like to make the amendment to your motion that we give just the Pictou County Traffic Ski Club the maximum of $1,000?
Yes.
Seconder, Councilor Elliott, you're okay with that?
It's not that, it's getting the 1,000, I thought it was more district recreation.
There's no cap on that. We're just gonna handle these separately.
Oh, okay, so I thought the other one was 1,000.
So
Yes,
the motion is just, this specific one is for the Pictou County Traffic Ski for the $1,000 maximum.
yes.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. And separately, we'll deal with the Lismore District Recreation Committee, and they have asking for $2,000 for youth leadership programming. Okay, moved by Councilor Dewar. Seconded by Warden Parker. This one is not capped, so we're able to give, if you so choose, up to the $2,000 requested. Go ahead, Councilor Webb.
Just one other issue. Down,
Yes,
and the money's there.
there is in the programming budget, there is the amount. So
Question answered. Go ahead, Councilor Palmer.
Should this be administered straight? Because I had the same thing in my area, and that's how they get their funding, administered straight.
Mr. Scott.
That's what I always paid them for. Anyway,
Made the motion, we'll see if it works. If it doesn't, then we'll go. Right.
Go ahead, Councilor Elliott.
Does that district have any money left in municipal grant funding? Service grant? Maybe that's why the request is being asked.
it does, the grant request does meet the guidelines of our recreation grant policy. So that's why
It's there.
it's here. It does meet the word, no, that's policy. It does mean it's a programming expense, and the policy says that we support that. or most potentially support that, so there is no example on that. though.
Okay, so even if this has been traditionally done by other districts as Mr. right, it does meet.
It does meet the terms of it does meet the terms of your recreation policy for funding.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead, Council Thompson.
Just a question on this, is what's left in that account?
There's, Councilor Gordon asked that question. There is money available to fund that, or to fund this.
Is there any more money?
But the question that was asked when this getting forward is to recreation, do you have the money to support it? And they could. So this application, there was money left, so we could advance it to council.
Okay. All right. Vote for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded nay. Motion carried. Okay, next we have a few municipal service grant funding extension requests. District 1, Barney's River Schoolhouse Museum, amount of $1,500 repairs to the museum. District 4, Tony River Community Hall, $3,000 repair to hall. District 6, West River Fire Department, $3,000 new signage on the damaged fire hall. District 10, the Mountain Cemetery, the amount of $836.34 for maintenance and repair work. District 11, Virtual Community Hall, $1,467.91 for insurance, deductible, and taxes. And Plymouth Community and Recreation Association, amount of $4,000 to repair to building.
So move.
Okay, it's moved in second. Go ahead, Gordon Parker.
Damaged fire hall for West River, it's a damaged sign, it's on the head of, it's something smashed this building. So where it says damaged fire hall, just say, it should say new community sign.
Yeah, I know, when I read that, it didn't.
It doesn't really.
It didn't sound right, it didn't pass.
I was damaged fire hall, I thought I did not intend to the fire hall get
The
damaged.
new sign that they purchased, they got damaged, yes.
No community sign.
All right, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded nay. Motion carried. Next, we have council grant extension requests. We have two this evening from District 11, Churchville Community Hall, an amount of $5,000 to replace the floor in the hall. And also the McDonald Rebecca Lodge, 108 Sunny Brae, $5,000 to repair the buildings. Okay, we'll move seconded. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded nay. Motion carried. 16, you have a community development grant extension request, District 1, Development Society, in the amount of $237.53 on the community coordinator position. So moved by Ward Parker. Seconded by Councillor Elliott. Any questions or comments on that extension request? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded nay. Motion carried. Okay, next we have the municipal tax write-off for the town of Trenton. Saw an email exchange there in our package. Moved by Councillor Watt. Second by Deputy Warden Murray. Any questions or comments on this? I believe here it is in the amount of $483.57. Questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded nay. Motion carried. Okay, next we have the tree removal program 2023, and this is the summary. Here. Okay. The commentary for this, Brian, or?
This is I guess the total cost, and now we're starting to put the application for the disaster relief fund together. So that is the cost, the 744, that includes HST. Yes,
So it's your budget.
so that's the gross cost. So we get a rebate back on HST. So so this is the first cost, so our budget was around like 69 is the budget.
Good to hear. So now we're ready to make application, and has that, process started?
Basically, the first step is invoicing and stuff, so this is really set now. This, so that we'll go through them, make sure all the other boxes that are required.
Councilor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to compliment Mr. Hale. Job well done. That was something we had pulled together very quickly, and it was done. With the entire cleanup was done in about 60 days, and we were all kept informed as to where they were and what they're working on. The costs, when we approved the budget, it was a complete guess, and we didn't do too bad. It's a lot of money. The only thing I'd suggest, tree removal program post Fiona. But putting 2023 in there, you might think, cause people to think that it's going to be another one next year and the year after. And we can't sustain that type of cost every year. So that's my only concern. Thank you.
Good point. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move along. The letter from the Glasgow to Pinch County Fire Departments regarding water usage. Councillor Wyden, you had asked to be placed in the agenda, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And actually, I think Ron Roth, 1920.
Yes.
Which one of them was that? Just, one of the council be aware and all the concerns and raised to using firefighters about the water charges from Glasgow. I don't think it's the general goals, the sort of things like that, everything it's the for assisting with fires and especially fires outside the Glasgow area. Also, they have a trainer in Parkdale. We don't know what impact that will have on the water usage there. Really have to haul water into Parkdale. There's a concern with connector fitting they need to hook into the water, according to this letter from the town of Glasgow. It's not in this letter, but there was a concern addressed to one of the departments, and maybe Evan can help with this one, was on the charges to drivers who use the ladder truck or so many truck that comes from Glasgow, that the drivers will be charged if they're assisting in fires outside town in Glasgow. And I guess there's a concern with boat rescue, well, the same thing apply to boat rescue and also the hazmat. I guess at the end of the day, the real concern is what is going to be a mutual aid agreement. If it's going to be renegotiated, that's fine, because I think that's 1989, that mutual aid agreement will be being, so maybe this time we look at that mutual aid. I think the concern out there is that perhaps it may be struck out, not just one town taking the lead in this, it should be, especially the association, it should be, and maybe they already are in on it, but ones that I'm talking to are aware of that happening. So if Evan has any information, I'll certainly appreciate it. So I would like to get back to fire marks.
Go ahead, Evan.
So I guess I'll address the water usage first. We were given this letter at the same time the department received it. We were provided any further information. We have reached out to Glasgow, actually the day of receiving this letter, with the same concerns that you know that they're as far as firefighting goes, as well as their fire trainer. As of 2 o'clock today, we haven't heard back on any of those issues at all. So it's still in the air at this point. That's what the future is going to hold for that. As far as the mutual aid agreement, I am aware that there's been some talk surrounding charging county departments to use specifically the ladder truck out of Glasgow. There's been no real concrete meetings held on that. And so we really don't have any more information to provide on that tonight. So we have those meetings and kind of dig into this a little bit deeper. As far as the mutual aid agreement goes, the county of Pictou is actually not even party to that agreement. It was actually negotiated with each individual municipality, and then in the county, it was each individual fire department that was a party to that agreement. So I don't think we would even have any negotiating power in terms of that. So I have been reaching out to our chiefs. Our chiefs are aware of sort of what's been going on, and I've been keeping them updated as much as I could. But like I said, we just don't have a great deal of information as of today.
And who would they try and negotiate with the chiefs of each of the departments that signed that mutual aid agreement? Is that?
Yeah, so originally it was negotiated, and I'm not exactly sure how, but it was each separate fire chief and usually the president of the department that are actually the parties on that agreement. And then for all the towns, it's the town clerk or the CAO at the time signed for that. So if they were going to renegotiate that, it would definitely be, I believe it'd be the chiefs of the department to the table to discuss that. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for putting that on the agenda. I saw that circulating online, and it's good to have that conversation so we know, get asked those questions, what's going on, so very much. So I guess we dealt with 19 and 20 there together. Are there any emergency resolutions? Seeing none? Emergency resolution?
It's not like the emergency resolution at all, but where are we with these bids? Just not how to write beyond, I guess I should have said something very first.
Yeah, no, we're basically ready to put it in for tender. We're just waiting on the technical report. And once we have that, we can go to.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for coming this evening, councilors, and meeting is adjourned.
Good night.